you've tried everything. And you're like, it's all I got. I can't do this.
Picking
I
up
can't
and
keep doing
interpreting as me not being enough was really
I laughed during the writing of it, and then I cried a lot after I wrote that vignette.
Not your responsibility to make your wife happy, right? Just like it's not my wife's responsibility to make me happy.
That my family have been briefing the press.
Becoming just summed it all up.
Readers, friends, it is time to dive into the world of celebrity memoirs, the controversial yet captivating stories of people we have never met, yet we know everything about. I have read a few memoirs for our podcast, Lit Society, and it's time to put some of those in their proper place on our tier list. Will your favorite make the list? Will you find a new favorite? Yes and yes. Let's get started. They're a little introspective sometimes a little self-praising, and sometimes a little cheesy. So we will rank them accordingly. We're going to start with a Kraft single. Now, I used to be a copywriter for Kraft on a contractual basis, and we couldn't even describe Kraft singles as cheese. They're like cheese product or something. So it's not even cheese, but what is it? And you know, it does have its purposes. It's good on toast, just like these books. It'll make sense. If you didn't know the celebrity, would you even want to read this? Then we have blue cheese. Now, this isn't for everyone, but I actually like it a lot, especially with atomic chicken wings. I feel like that blue cheese sauce really. Then we have manchego. What charcuterie platter is complete without manchego? I don't know why I'm talking like that. Manchego is really easy to enjoy. It's not a challenging cheese, and I think these books are also not challenging. Then we have burrata. Burrata is on every menu, especially right now in Chicago. I have no idea why, but actually I do, because it's good. It's trendy for a reason. These memoirs were really talked about in the news. There were quotes pulled from them. Yeah, maybe, you know, faux shizzle, genuine will end up on this category, perhaps. I could see it. I don't know yet, but I could see it. Then we have camembert. Oh, you're fancy now. You eat the camembert. Oh, ho, ho. So this is like enduringly delicious. It is cheese that you put on the shelf that company can see, because they're like, oh, you read that? And you like, yes, I am interesting and I read. You know, you're not ashamed of these books. Also, you know, they're kind of stinky, just like life, but in an enjoyable way, in that they're honest. They're very honest books. Yeah, let's begin. We are going to start with Worthy by Jada Pinkett Smith. This book taught me a lot about the internet. It taught me a lot about how people feel about women, because I also have read, of course, Will by Will Smith, which we'll get to. And people had a lot less to say about a lot of things that were some of the same topics that were covered in Worthy.
And there's no way he isn't upset with how she's been going around lately and sharing all of their personal business. In this book, she is detailing all of these major events throughout her life, including her relationship with Will. And there's a little bit too much information shared.
There were some things that were kind of picked up and dropped off. They really didn't mean anything. For example, she talks about this time when she's visiting a much older boyfriend in her youth who works at like a 7-Eleven. And she talks about the dangerousness of going to visit him at his job late at night in Baltimore. But nothing really comes from that. It's just a memory that she has. And in the overall story, her overall story, I see where it fits. But in itself, to me, an editor could have taken that part out and we still would have gotten the effect of the book. It was interesting to me to see her talk about her life, her upbringing, some of the things I remember in pop culture, like her discussion with Eazy-E on a panel for, I think, MTV or something. She talks about the backstory of that, and that was interesting to me. The most compelling part of this book is how she talks about herself and her journey to find her worth. The path Jada took isn't one I would take, but I appreciated her style and the way that she thoughtfully discussed her traumas and the challenges that she faces in her marriage and just in her life. This wasn't a book bashing her husband or anyone else. The biggest takeaway from me is that Jada is now at a place where she has to work to find her worth on a daily basis, but she knows how to do that. She has the tools. And now she's at a point where she's not begging people to see her as worthy because she feels worthy, and that value comes from within. Love the story. Love the overall theme. I'm going to say that this is a burrata because this is trendy, but it is trendy for a reason. You know, it only makes sense to follow it up with Will. Will is a story of a man who finds his path career-wise very young in life, who bets on himself again and again. He didn't come from a perfect home, but despite that, he overcame challenges both within and externally. He shed his kind of Philly bad boy persona to find who he truly was, and he kept chasing that dream. And that dream actually being to become the most successful movie star of all time, surpassing Tom Cruise. And verdict's out. Overall, this story felt to me like someone who really loves themselves. And there's nothing wrong with loving yourself. That's a good thing, right? But it felt like a hero origin story. Listen, I felt exhausted after reading this book, flat out. He finishes the book skydiving or something in front of all his children because he's afraid to do it because he might die. So he does it in front of his children. Now, if you want to take a chance, why your kids got to be there? I don't know. He talks about falling in love with co-stars via method acting. Yeah, I mean, he really puts his all into everything he does, and I admire that. But I will say that Will was not for me. It wasn't. Oh, it's a craft single. Oh, no. Oh, no. People love this book. Oh, well. Oh, well. Oh, well. Oh, well. Hey. Oh, well. Then we have Thicker Than Water by Kerry Washington. This is not a book I expected to enjoy because I only know Kerry from let's say 4 movies and 1 very popular television show. She's not a mainstay in my life where I felt like I had to know more about her. But because it was on our schedule for our podcast, I read this book and thoroughly enjoyed it. One thing that separates Kerry Washington's autobiography from others is that she's not talking about anyone else. She will mention her husband in as far as their relationship relates to the overall story of her life. She is not divulging secrets. Well, she is, but they're her secrets to divulge for the most part. This is not a salacious book, like full of gossip. It is very motivational in a lot of ways. And for that, I'm actually going to put it, you know what? I'm going to put it in Brada, but I'll tell you why. I enjoyed being in the pages of her book. I didn't want it to end. I was really on the edge of my seat. I love the way she put her prose together. She's a great writer, or whoever her ghostwriter was told her story in a very engaging way. Really well done, economical. It wasn't too long. Oh, this is tacky, but it actually made me it's going to make me rethink Worthy, and I'm putting Worthy in Manchego. This is the last time I'll do that. From now on, like whatever category we choose, that's the cheese it is. But I just need you to know Kerry Washington's book is up there. All right, now let's move on. The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. Whoo! This book had me in tears, real life tears. I did not expect that. Britney's story is one I knew superficially, just because she's Britney Spears. And of course, I was familiar with her music and the whole Free Britney movement. But to hear everything she's gone through from her, well, through Michelle Williams, not the Destiny's Child Michelle Williams, the other one. It was really heart-wrenching. It was heart-wrenching. If someone tells you this person has been through this, this, and this, you're like, oh, that's so sad. But when someone tells you, I have been through this, this, and this, you're like, that's how I was reading. Just thinking about it. When she talks about the statement she gave in her defense to the court, when she was challenging her conservatorship, we read that statement on our podcast, by the way, so check out that episode. But that's when real tears were coming down my eyes. When she talks about Justin, she's not really bashing him throughout the book. In fact, there is a letter that he wrote her after he broke up with her, talking about he was like broken. First of all, that's grade A manipulation. He broke up with her and then wrote her a letter talking about how much he was suffering from breaking up with her. And I think she still has that letter under her bed, right? Yeah. So this book is very honest. She really had no one on her team that wasn't financially invested in her career. So sometimes people weren't looking out for her. Most of the time, people weren't looking out for her. They were looking out for themselves when dealing with her. So it was a hard read, but I can see it being easily enjoyable. And for that, I will put it in Manchego. It's a good cheese. It's easy to enjoy, widely likable cheese. Now we have Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And y'all like, who's Phil Knight? Some of you anyway. He's like the creator of Nike. Is he a celebrity? I'll let you debate with your mama, but I'm gonna put it on here just because. I don't even know where else I would talk about this book. A lot of people say that if you are an entrepreneur or you need motivation to start an entrepreneurial path, this is a must read, okay? Phil Knight talks about having nothing but an idea and borrowing again and again from his upper class family to get that idea made. He visited another country and fed them just an idea, no product, and became a huge success. He developed his business at a very different time. Now with the advancement of the internet, this business model is not something that can even be emulated, so I no longer find it inspiring. I also thought he was very privileged and he didn't discount his privilege at all, which is refreshing. But unless you come from a family that can give you loan after loan to fail and then eventually succeed, in order to have success, you usually have to cut your teeth and learn. He had the opportunity to do that. A lot of people do not have those chances. So I don't really know what benefit I got from this book, to be honest. It was the creation of Nike. I wear Adidas. It's also very interesting that he doesn't talk a lot about Michael Jordan in this book. And if you read the backstory on Phil Knight and MJ, they're not besties. So I think a lot of Nike's success actually has to do with the Jumpman brand also, especially in later years. And that's just kind of glanced over. So overall, I got nothing from this book. I didn't feel it was very forthcoming or necessarily honest in the ways that I expected. And so for that, it is a craft single. Let's move on to Spare by Prince Harry. When this book came out, our podcast rushed to read it, rushed to cover it because it was at the top of the news cycle. And then it just kind of died, especially stateside. No one is talking about this book anymore. I'm not sure anyone's talking about Prince Harry anymore.
Yeah, and at the time it hurt.
We got a lot of hate mail when we read this book because we refused to hate people that Prince Harry talks about in this book, especially if he didn't hate him. I mean, he talks about his father in a very endearing way, which I'm not sure was expected. This was another book similar to Worthy, where people, before they even read it, decided they knew what it was about. I don't know much about Prince Harry. I know history. And I know where the royal family, how where they come from. The reason for his villain origin story were the paparazzi. He despises the paparazzi. He blames them for his mother's death and for his ultimate unhappiness in England, his mother home, who he loves. I mean, he loves England, but he just didn't feel like he could stay there because of the paparazzi and because of the fact that his family actually fed the paparazzi stories. And sometimes those stories would be about him. This is kind of common knowledge that the firm works very closely with the press. The family is a business. So if the business is slandering you to the press, who can you go to but to the press? So I really empathize with Prince Harry. Again, I didn't feel like he was overly bashing anyone in this book. He just really despises the paparazzi. Now, being in the pages of Spare, I thought was really fun at the time. When I read it at the beginning of 2023, a lot of people were reading it. So it kind of felt like a universal book club. And that was really fun. But to pick up this book today, you are on your own. No one else is reading this. No one else is really talking about it. So for that, I will say it is blue cheese. It is not for everyone. It's not for many. But I really liked it at the time. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And then we have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. I was not an iCarly fan. I didn't watch iCarly, but knowing nothing about Jennette and picking up this book, the storytelling is A+++. That she can tailor her voice for the period of life she is discussing. When she is a juvenile, she writes like a juvenile. And as she develops into a woman, her sentence structure becomes more complex, her storytelling more complex, and she of course is talking about deeply, darkly traumatic things. To give you an example, her mother introduced ED into her life, and those disorders have followed her throughout her life into adulthood. And the point was to kind of stop puberty from advancing so that she could continue getting childhood roles. She's been through a lot. I was so proud that she was able to take control of these traumatic stories, acknowledge them, but then make space for her to grow beyond them. So I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy is a book that I purchased in hardcover, in audio, and one more format. Oh yes, an ebook. I read this book and immediately wanted to support Jennette McCurdy, someone who I knew very little about and had hardly even heard of. I cannot say the same for this guy who I knew, very well in pop culture, or this guy. No, it was Jennette who I was like, I got to buy all these books. So, of course, Jennette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died is Common Bear. That is a book I recommend to people with the caveat that it does have a lot of content warnings. It talks about ED. It talks about abuse. Her mother refused to allow her to shower by herself. There's a lot in that book, okay? It's very heavy in parts, but because of the way that she presents it, it doesn't feel like that the weight of that trauma is crushing you, or I didn't feel that way as a reader. I felt like there was hope at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, I'm Glad My Mom Died. Top tier, Common Bear. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. I was really apprehensive to even put this book on this list because I don't feel like she's a celebrity. I feel like she's more than that, right? But who says a celebrity can't be a substantial element in culture? A prolific writer, a historian. Who says that's not possible? They can be all that. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is one of 3 books that are part of her autobiographical series. The fact that she talks about how her first child was conceived, the fact that she talks about an assault that she endured repeatedly by her mother's boyfriend, the way that boyfriend died, all of these really dark parts of her life, she is so honest about. And it's really a no holds barred type of storytelling, a type of memoir. So for that, and in the pages, because it's Maya Angelou, because she's the type of writer that she is, it is very, I hate to say fun, but it really is. She's a writer. I would love to emulate her style of writing. It is poetic. It is poetry without being poetry. So this is Common Bear. This is a classic for a reason. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is both underrated and highly rated. You can't rate this book well enough. It's great. Highly recommend. And in the line of celebrities that mean more than perhaps what we may think of when we think of celebrities, I have Malcolm X. The autobiography of Malcolm X as told to Alex Haley. Alex Haley, of course, is the creator of Roots, Queen. He's a great historian, was a great historian. And this is a book about a man so often misunderstood. Again, it's one of those books that people may feel they know about without ever reading it. People definitely have preconceived notions about who Malcolm X was. It's often said that he was more aggressive and Martin Luther King was more passive. I'm not sure that's really true when it comes to either man. They both have their nuances and they have their reasons, right? They have their reasons for their thinking. They have their motivations. When Malcolm X talks about his upbringing, he talks about his mother, everything that his family went through, and how he became a man during this time, there is great value in the pages of Malcolm X's autobiography. And for that is Common Bear. Yes, another Common Bear. Indeed, More Than Enough is like Devil Wears Prada meets, actually, it's nothing like it. Elaine Welteroth's book is a great peek behind the curtain of publishing. I love Elaine's story. I love how she is able to take any situation and find her success within it. And so for that, it is Barada. This is a book that ages well, and that I would still return to the pages of if in fact you need that entrepreneurial motivation that Shoe Dog was supposed to give you and it didn't. Oops. Now let's head over to Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. I'm not a Trevor Noah fan. I don't think he's that funny. However, this book, it is still most listened to episodes of our podcast. This book I highly recommend on audio because Trevor is able to pour personality into every character he describes. And he also casually sidesteps his own failures sometimes in a way that is with a wink. He wants you to know, yeah, I know I was trash in this moment. I'm highly aware, but ain't I lovable? Ain't I great? Yeah, I burnt a house down. It's fine. It's fine because it's me. I will go ahead and give it Common Bear. It is enduringly delicious. That is a great book. Highly recommend Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. It details well apartheid in South Africa. If you want to learn about that history, a firsthand account of what it was like to grow up in apartheid South Africa and to see the nation come out of that, then I highly recommend Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And if you just want to read someone's love story to their mother who had every adversity thrown at her, and how the respect he has for her has motivated him to have self-respect and to pursue his passions, again, highly recommend this read. Okay, then we have another book that's not on a lot of people's lists, but maybe should be, and that's Dapper Dan, Made in Harlem. This is the thrilling true story of a clothier who found his success in New York by counterfeiting prints of big fashion houses. So he would take Gucci prints, put them on high quality fabrics and leathers, and make street clothes. And street clothes are like clothes that upper class Black celebrities would love. But streetwear is kind of a erroneous category anyway, because most fashions born within that genre become high fashion eventually. So as he was being taken down by these big fashion houses, and rightly so, for counterfeiting their products, they were then counterfeiting him years later by recreating and, saying they were paying homage to his designs. And people weren't having it. You can tell a Dapper Dan design right away. He eventually found success as a resident artist under the House of Gucci name. This is a very rags to riches to rags story, and then to riches again. He's learned a lot of lessons, made a lot of mistakes. Again, if you're looking for entrepreneurial motivation and Shoe Dog isn't quite giving it to you, Dapper Dan didn't have a family to rely on that he could take money from whenever he failed. His family was from the projects. He had a lot of people relying on him. So he really had to hit success. Each blow had to count. And so for that, and for the audio version, which is narrated by Amari Hardwick, I would give it a Common Bear rating. It is a great book, highly recommend. I really love Mariah Carey. I love her music. I love that she writes her songs. And this book really details the motivation behind some of her hugest hits. So she'll talk about a really hard time she was having and how this song, these lyrics just came to mind. And then she ironed them out and made them into a chart-topping success. So for the fun, just ride that she's gonna take you on, it's a great book. But if you know anything about her life, there are some key points that she's not going to include because she's Mariah Carey and she's not going to let you all into her business, darling. So it's not a very honest book. It's just fun, and you get what you get. You get what the queen serves. And if you want more, too bad. However, if you know nothing about Mariah Carey, is this going to be a book you really enjoy? I'll say that the development of her songs is very enjoyable to hear, but this book is not going to be for everyone. It's a blue cheese. And then lastly, we have Becoming. It is my favorite political memoir because it's the only one I've ever read, and it's not political at all. This is about Michelle Obama's upbringing, and she does touch on meeting the man she would eventually marry, but that is not the story. The story is her and how she became Michelle Obama. Being in Chicago, it's fun to hear her talk about the South Shore neighborhood and what it was like when she was growing up, and how as her family moved in, all the white families started moving out, and she looked across the street and there was a hole in the ground because someone had literally picked up their house and took it with them to, I don't know, Skokie, Evanston, I don't know, but they were leaving because the black families were moving in. Even when she moved into her dorm in Princeton or Harvard, her roommate moved out because her roommates and her roommate's mother were just aghast that a black girl was moving into their dorm. So again, racism is something that follows her constantly, but you can feel in Michelle's writings that that is not something that she's gonna let stick on her. The hate that people give her, she's not holding on to. She is a very determined woman. She is a hard worker. And this book was exhausting in a good way because it made me feel like, well, what do I gotta do around here? Because am I doing everything I can do? Because Michelle is doing everything she can do. And for that, I'm giving it Barada. It's pretty great. Now I'm cheating a little because these last two books I actually read before our podcast began in 2020, and they are Tina Fey's Bossy Pants and Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me by Mindy Kaling. Tina Fey's book, I definitely listened to on Audible. Reading it, the jokes may not necessarily land as the author intended, so I would recommend this an audiobook, and I'll say that it's fun, it's lighthearted. It didn't change my life, but that's not necessarily what I'm looking for in a memoir. And so I will say it is blue cheese. Maybe not for everyone. And then finally, we have Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me by Mindy Kaling. And to that, I would say absolutely they are, because you are annoying in this book. Now, I'm not saying that Mindy's annoying necessarily because I don't know that lady. However, every page of this book irked me. She talks about her love of white people moving her to Dartmouth, and combined with some of the things I saw from her show when it was on, I did feel like she had a race issue that made me uncomfortable. I'm not saying that's who she is today, but it was a few things that I just didn't need. However, she's a very hard worker. She has been her entire life, and it didn't make me want to know more about her. And so for that, it's a craft single. Aww. So there you have it. That concludes the tier ranking of the celebrity memoirs I have read. Looking at this list, there's a lot more I need to read. I see some holes here, some people I need to get to know through the pages of their memories. Now remember that my ranking is purely subjective. Each of these books offers something valuable and unique. Of course, my thoughts on each memoir is not a reflection on the value of anyone's life or story, but instead it's about how their story was told and how I received the aforementioned telling. Let me know in the comments which celebrity memoir you've read and how do you rank them. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, read something.